Why do we love rapists so much? Why are we so deferential to them and their needs? Why are we so protective of them? Why, even today, in 2015, in the United States of America, a country where we never seem to stop congratulating ourselves for being the world's beacon of hope and freedom and opportunity, why are so many of our institutions seemingly more preoccupied with shielding rapists from the consequences of their crimes and the knowledge of their crimes being released to the public than they are with investigating their crimes and driving them from their midst into the arms of the criminal justice system? Why is that still the way it works in far too many cases? I was reading a story that was brought to my attention recently by a Facebook friend that actually happened last year but is still somewhat in the news because of the fallout from it, about a woman who was a student at the University of Oregon who was gang raped by 3 members of the University of Oregon basketball team. Now, following the incident, the university did its own investigation, and they concluded that the charges made against these basketball players were probably true, and the players were kicked off of the basketball team, and eventually they were also banned from campus. So even though no criminal charges were filed, because the prosecutor in this case decided there wasn't enough evidence to bring the case to a criminal trial, the college investigated on its own and concluded that the charges were credible, and they punished the accused. So this is not one of these cases of a frivolous accusation. The problem is, even though the university did investigate these charges and did find them to be credible and did punish the players, none of this happened until a few months after the crime had been committed and reported to the university. And subsequently, it was uncovered that the coach of the basketball team knew that one of the players that committed this crime had a history of sexual assault. In fact, had been asked to leave his previous university because of a sexual assault allegation. And yet he still recruited him for the University of Oregon's basketball team, because I suppose the best interests of the basketball team trump the best interests of the student body on the campus as a whole. Because as long as you can get the best possible basketball team, as long as that team can finish with a good record, I guess it's worth taking the risk that you are recruiting a rapist. It gets worse. The victim of this gang rape is suing the University of Oregon for what she believes to be a violation of her rights under Title IX. And Title IX requires that universities investigate sexual assault allegations even if no criminal charges are filed, which is exactly what happened in this case. And they did investigate, and they did discipline the students that were found to be guilty by the university of these crimes. But according to the lawsuit by the victim, they didn't do this in anything like a timely fashion. As I said, they waited several months before this was done. And she considers this a violation of her rights under Title IX because she does not feel it was taken seriously by the university. It was not treated as a priority to investigate this assault against her. She feels that they were more concerned about the basketball team and about the university's reputation than about seriously pursuing justice for her as a victim of this crime. The university filed a countersuit against the student, and as a part of that, they accessed her records with her on-campus therapist that she went to see after the assault, looking for anything that they could possibly use in their defense for her lawsuit or in their counterclaim against her. They accessed her therapy records, which shockingly was completely legal for them to do. Now, normally, in order to access medical records, including that of a therapist, in a lawsuit, you would have to show that the therapy records are somehow relevant to the lawsuit. For instance, if someone is suing for medical malpractice, the medical records the relevant medical records at least, could be brought into the case as evidence. And even though medical records are typically confidential between patient and doctor, everybody who is working on the case would be able to see them just as a matter of fairness, as a matter of discovery. Everybody would be able to see it because it's relevant to the case. But in this case, the lawsuit was not about the therapist. The lawsuit was not about medical treatment provided by the campus. The lawsuit was about the campus's conduct in the investigation. But incredibly, campus medical records, including campus therapist records, are considered separately from other medical records, from what I guess off-campus medical records. If you go to your campus therapist or to your campus medical clinic, and then you later sue your university for something, your university is completely within its legal rights to access your campus medical records, to look for something it could use to defend itself in the lawsuit, even if the lawsuit is not relevant to your medical treatment or your therapy appointments on campus at all. It's completely legal. Of course, this has ramifications that go well beyond sexual assault allegations, but because of this particular case, this University of Oregon case, those ramifications are foremost on my mind. You want an example of rape culture? Those of you who are skeptical of that term, those of you who hear that term and you say, oh, there those social justice warriors go again with their illusory concept of rape culture. You want a concrete example of the sort of thing that is covered by that concept, that is referred to when we talk about rape culture? How about the fact that it is completely legal for a university to access therapy records and medical records collected on campus of a rape victim, and then to use those records against the victim to defend itself in a lawsuit that the victim has brought against the school because the school botched the investigation of the rape allegations in the first place. The school did not do its job. The school put the good of the basketball team ahead of the good of the rape victim and was sued because of it. And in that situation, it was completely legal for the university to basically invade the student's privacy, to invade the privacy of their student who was a rape victim in order to defend itself in a lawsuit that was brought about by its own misconduct. That's one example. That's one concrete example of the sort of action and the attitudes that underlie it and justify it that are referred to by the concept of rape culture. You want another example? How about the fact that this sort of activity, this kind of behavior by a university is not even all that unusual. A few months ago on an episode of my 5 Stupid Things series, I referenced a study that was just released that found an alarmingly large number of American colleges and universities that use various dishonest means to underreport incidents of sexual assault cases on their campuses. Because apparently giving the impression that their campuses are safe places is better than actually making them safe places. Making it look like sexual assault is not a problem at this particular university is more important than taking the steps to actually make it so. It reminds me very uncomfortably of the sort of attitudes exhibited historically, and really still exhibited in many cases, toward sexual assaults by the Catholic Church, where it was more important to protect the priests who were accused of these monstrous crimes than it was to do the right thing by the victims and to take the side of those who had been victimized and had been rendered powerless and had had this horrible, horrible crime inflicted on them. The institution, which has all the power in this situation, more power even than the rapist who imposed himself on the victim. The institution is the one that has the power to make things right, at least as far as things could be made right. And instead of using its power to make things right, it uses its power to cover its ass. We like to tell ourselves, probably because it makes us more comfortable, that things like this don't happen anymore. And yet they do happen. They still happen. In the year 2015, we still have reports of universities choosing to cover their asses or choosing to do what's best for a lucrative sports franchise than to do what's best for one of their students who was raped by several of their other students. We don't like to think of ourselves as a culture that condones rape in any measure. Many of us instinctively strike out against even the merest suggestion of that. And yet we have cases like this, and we have much, much less important cases, examples, like the grief that Sarah Silverman got on Twitter last week for posting a satirical list of rape prevention tips that was actually a couple years old, that has been floating around on the internet for quite a while, that puts the onus of rape prevention not on the potential victim, but on the potential perpetrator. And so many people were so offended by that, they didn't even get that it was a joke. They didn't even get that it was satire making a point. That point being that it is bullshit to constantly put the responsibility for rape prevention on those who stand to be its victims rather than those who stand to commit the crime. People were so offended by that, they got all high and mighty and self-righteous, and all the not all men bullshit started up again. It's how dare she talk to men like it? Not all men are rapists, and it doesn't do anything. We really flatter ourselves with this idea that we're not a culture that condones rape, and we react really badly when we are challenged on that. Sometimes I think it's not just that it's an uphill battle, it's that the hill is so damn steep. And we built the hill. That's that's the insane part of it. We built the hill.